our meeting of the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, and today is September 2018. I want to thank everyone on the council for coming to meet with us today in Salem, and before we get started, I do want to thank Andy, Patty, Brenda, others for helping set up this meeting, and to the OPAC Executive Committee for helping prepare a productive agenda for us today. I also want to welcome our newest member, Melissa Kaiser. Melissa is the director of the Haystack Rock Awareness Program and the director of the Oregon Northwest Aquatic and Marine Educators. She was appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Rules Committee during the May legislative days. And she sits in the Coastal Conservation seat of OPAC, which is formerly held by Robin Hartman. Do you want to say some words?
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's still early, but I'll definitely, there's a learning curve, obviously, and so today is my first meeting. I'll be taking a lot in. I don't think I'm swallowing this enough. I'm sorry. Thank you for having me.
He's not here, but I also want to share that Terry Thompson, who has served on OPAC for a wonderful 14 years, has submitted his letter of resignation to Governor Brown to leave OPAC effective September 22nd. So he's been, right?
Yes, he is.
So I think many of us in the room want to acknowledge Terry and thank him for his service to the state of Oregon and to OPAC. So later this afternoon, we're going to take a few minutes to do that, to celebrate his service. And so I also just want to give you a heads up in case you want to say a few words or think of a funny Terry story. This is your warning to start doing so. Lastly, I just want to thank members of the public from being here and for our elected officials in the audience. Commissioner David Yamamoto's joined us, and I saw Mark Smith here, but maybe I just say that's some in the parking lot. All right. So now we're going to go around the room and have folks introduce themselves. If you can please state your name, organization, which seat you're filling in OPAC, and one fun thing you did this summer. Lauren, you want to kick us off?
Laura.
Laurel Hillman. Laurel Hillman. Can you guys hear this? Yeah. Okay. Laurel Hillman with Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, sitting in for Director Lisa Assumption. She was going to attend today, but unfortunately she is sick. Oh wait, one fun thing. Sorry.
One fun thing.
One fun thing. I went up to Seattle to see my sister who's getting married, so we did wedding planning, and that was super fun. Nice.
My name's Richard Deep. I'm from Brookings. I represent the South Coast Area Sports and Recreational Fishermen. And I did a lot of fun things this summer, including a cruise to Alaska, and I went tuna fishing Saturday and whacked. So it's been a good summer.
Good morning, this is Karen Brady. I'm in the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife seat and manage the Marine Resources Program for the agency. And my fun thing that I'll talk about was going camping with my boys. We're now 8 years old, twin 8-year-old boys. But we went camping at Boulder Lake. It was fabulous. So that was my best memory of summer.
Good morning, Bob Main, South Coast Representative for the Commissioners, County Commissioner for Coos County. What did I do for fun? In June, late June, I flew to Florida to help my son remodel his house that he just purchased. It was interesting. It was 95 degrees most days, and 87 and up for humidity. And I got to see the inside of the house and Home Depot and Lowe's for a couple of weeks.
I'm John Holloway, North Coast Charter Sport and Recreational Fisheries. I'm a member of RFA Oregon State Chapter and Fishermen's Advisory Committee for Tillamook. And what I did this summer is I witnessed the inaugural season of a midwater sport fishery for Oregon, and that I and ODFW worked pretty hard on for 10 years.
That's great.
My name is Susan Chambers. I'm with West Coast Seafood Processors Association. I'm the South Coast Commercial Fisheries representative for OPAC. And this summer, I did actually nothing. I just took my dog to the beach and enjoyed the weather, such as it was.
My name is Charlie Flyben. I am the Coastal Non-Fishing Recreation seat for the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, and I work for Surfrider Foundation. Son?
I don't think they're working out here.
Okay. Well, I've got a loud enough voice anyhow. So something fun I did this summer. What wasn't fun was I blew out my shoulder, so I couldn't surf. But what was fun was that I got a boat new to me, and so I spent a lot of time on the ocean anyhow, just in a boat doing a lot of fishing. So.
And I'm Steve Shipsey, and I'm legal counsel to the council. And this summer I got to go back to North Carolina with my son. He ran in the National Junior Olympic Finals. And it was fun. We got to see lots of places that are on the news for hurricane damage.
I'm Jason Miner. I'm the Governor Brown's Natural Resource Policy Manager. I sit in a ex officio seat on OPAC. For fun, I went camping in the Drift Creek Wilderness and spent some time bumping around Cape Perpetua area, which I haven't spent enough time around with my 9-year-old, 5-year-old daughter. I like to term new to us. We acquired a new to us Eurovan camper, which makes camping with pop top. That's the universal sign language for pop top camper. That makes camping with 2 young girls much easier. So we did it on Labor Day weekend, which I never would have driven to the coast on Labor Day weekend with no reservations, but for that camperman and U.S. Forest Service.
So I'm Gina Carter, and I'm sitting in the statewide conservation seat. And let's see, the one fun thing we did this summer, we did a lot of traveling, but we also got a new puppy. So it's been very fun. Yeah, watching him be crazy.
I'm Walter Chuck. I'm a commissioner for the Port of Newport. I represent Ports, Marine Transportation, Navigation, and the fun thing I did this summer was my son graduated high school, so we are now empty nesters. So that's a big accomplishment for us.
I'm Patty Snow. I'm the Coastal Program Manager representing the Department of Land Conservation and Development on OPAC. And probably the funnest thing this summer was spending a week up in Spokane. My son, almost graduated this year, has been junior champion for clay targets. So we were up there at a shooting range for a week.
And I am Melissa Kaiser, and thank you again for that introduction. I am the Coastal Conservation or Environmental Organization seat. And I am directly representing the Haystack Rock Awareness Program for the City of Cannon Beach, as well as the Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, as well as the North Coast. Oh my goodness, the Wildlife Center of the North Coast. There's a lot of acronyms floating around in my head, and the Northwest Aquatic and Marine Educators. And this summer, we also went camping in a very, very, very old conversion van that doesn't do the this. It just does a lot of the this and the what is this. But we did a 4 corners tour of the state, and it was wonderful. I had 2 little kids, so it was really fun and very sticky. Day 7 was great.
Jim Faraday, I'm the Coastal Public Representative from Coos Bay. And for the last 22 years, I get together with my 3 siblings. They're all from Idaho with their kids, and we each pick a place to meet and camp. And this year it was my choice, and we did Crater Lake, 3 nights at the Mazama campground and 1 night in the lodge. And this last weekend was the second of 2 weekends that they close off the east side of the rim for bicyclists. So we did the Bike the Rim as well. That's great.
Good morning, Lauren Goddard, Depot Bay Coastal City elected official. fun this summer. Showed a lot of people a good time. Quite literally, own a charter company there in Depot Bay, so get to help people with their recreation. And as far as the empty nest syndrome, it's a myth. You will survive.
Kevin Dunn, North Coast Commercial Fisheries. I operate a trawler out of Astoria and I build nets as a side. Fun thing I did this summer, I got to take some time and just be home, which isn't always the case.
Chris, you want to go next? We're introducing ourselves, name, organization, what seat you're in, and one fun thing you did this summer.
Awesome. Apologies for being late. Chris Wall with NOAA. I work for NOAA's Office for Coastal Management. I sit in the federal agency liaison seat, although I focus on NOAA coordination and bringing that here. And this summer I moved, and so that's exciting. So we moved from Portland to Southern Oregon, and still getting used to the drive. So sorry that I'm late.
Lorinda,
Yeah.
you want to introduce yourself?
Oh.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lorinda DeHaan. I support the Oregon Coastal Management Program and OPAC. Thank you for coming.
And I'm Andy Lanier. I'm the Marine Affairs Coordinator for the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and I am your staff person. And do the audience. Would you like the audience to introduce themselves?
We have a microphone.
Oh, okay. Do I say a fun thing? You can say a fun thing if you'd like. Hi, I'm Dave Fox with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And my fun thing is my wife and son and I took a 7,200-mile driving trip around the country. Went to 24 states, stayed at Airbnbs the whole way, and it went off great. Saw a lot of country that I'd never seen before. It's pretty awe-inspiring.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Commissioner Dave Yamamoto of Tillamook County. A fun thing I did this summer. So if anyone has ever been to the Tillamook County Fair and been to the Pig and Ford races, the World Championship Pig and Ford races occurred on Saturday this year in August, and it happened to rain over 3/4 of an inch the night before, and it was a muddy mess, but the pigs loved it. They did.
Tom Rudolph, I'm with the Pew Charitable Trust, based in Portland, and fun thing this summer is I'm a rafter and had a very busy summer rafting. I got to do a bunch of trips with wife and kids, and a couple of different overnights with just some old friends from college and stuff.
Tara Brock, also with the Pew Charitable Trust. Fun things this summer, went camping with my family, my 2 young boys, and at Trillium Lake we rented a canoe and took my 2-year-old out for the first time, and he loved it. So I think we're going to be investing in some watercrafts here soon. So.
Good morning, I'm Karen Driscoll. I work with the Otter Rock Marine Reserve. Fun thing this summer, due to a medical situation, I do something fun every single day. And today it's the OPAC meeting here.
Hello, Jocelyn Ennevoldson. I'm also here for fun. I am a Salem resident and marine policy enthusiast. And for fun this summer, I hiked a majority of the Oregon Coast Trail and backpacked and camped and saw the beaches and the headlands and the rivers, and it was so magical.
Hi everyone, Deanna Carciolo. I'm currently unattached, but here for fun. And for something fun that happened this summer is I finished my Sea Grant Fellowship, and we'll be starting back up with DLCD October 1st as the Rocky Shores Coordinator.
Good morning, my name is Charlotte Whitefield and I work for ODFW on their OAH Council. Something that I've did this summer and been constantly doing for fun is remodeling my 1920s farmhouse. So this summer I actually ripped apart the mudroom and in the process of putting it back together and painting it.
Well, thank you everyone, and thanks for being with us today. So everyone had an excellent summer, and hopefully fall will be just as great. I do want to say, since Terry's not here, we do have a card going around for him, so if he shows up at your desk and you want to write a few words, that would be great. All right, now we're going to move into the meeting agenda and also summary. So you should have before you the meeting summary from our April 26, 2018 meeting. Please raise your hand if you are missing a copy or need one delivered to you.
Yep, everyone should have a copy.
Hopefully everyone had a chance to read it, and if not, we could take a quick minute to do so. For new members in the room or others, we do not call these technically minutes because they're not a verbatim recording of what we did. We actually do a recording, which you can see Andy's doing in the back of the room. So this is just a summary that highlights the activities that occurred or maybe any major decisions that happened. Does anyone have any edits or suggestions that they'd like to change in the minute? Summary, yes, or Andy?
One item of note is that it references addendums. There are 3 of them. There are 3 letters that OPAC wrote after the April 26th meeting. They will be appended to the back of this as a part of the official record.
Excellent.
They're not here now, but they will be.
Letting everyone read it for a second. In order to approve these, we'll need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve the draft meeting summary from April 26, 2018, Advisory Council.
So there is a motion to approve the meeting summary from the April 26, 2018 meeting and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, great. Thank you. So now we're going to turn to the meeting agenda for the day. And I do want to provide a little bit of background about our meeting and what we'll be doing today. I also want you to know I'm at the very tail end of a cold, so I'm not going to make any of you sick, but you might have to listen to me cough, so I apologize for that. The purpose of this meeting and the reason why it's scheduled is that we wanted to take some time to learn about the Territorial Sea Plan, its history and all of its different parts. We also wanted to discuss how the Territorial Sea Plan fits into Oregon's statewide planning goals and guidelines, the Ocean Plan, and other pieces that all bring together how we govern the ocean. We're doing this because there are so many new members on OPAC in the last year or two, and we thought it was important to take a step back and do an in-depth educational session. And so what we're going to do for the next 2 days here is hear different presentations explaining the Territorial Sea Plan. We're essentially going to march through, as you can see on the agenda, each part of the plan, starting with part 1 and going through 5, as well as certain important components of it, such as enforceable policies. And so really what the other thing we want to do is allow people an opportunity to ask questions, make it very rich with dialogue, and so that we hopefully all leave with a clear understanding of the past and the future or the current situation with the Territorial Sea Plan. I also want to say, because this meeting is mostly educational, we're not going to be doing much other business or motions. We also are going to offer opportunities for the public to be involved. So as you can see on the agenda, there are numerous places to offer public testimony. So if folks in the audience have information that they want to share or perspective about a specific section of the Territorial Sea Plan, we encourage you to do that during the public comment period. Additionally, though, we also have, and maybe Lorinda has them in the back of the room. Excellent. You're on top of it. We're also providing a form in the back of the room, which Andy's holding up, that you can submit a question. So if you're sitting there and you're listening to the presenter and you have a question, you can write it down and pass it to Andy or Lorinda, and they'll get it to us, and we can help read the questions so that it gives you another opportunity to participate than having to wait for the public comment session. So if there's something that you'd like to do during the session or a question, write it on there and we'll take care of it. All right. Are there any questions about the agenda or changes anyone needs to suggest? Great. So with that, we're going to to move into our first session, which is going to provide an overview of the territorial sea plan and the Ocean Advisory Council, and also just various jurisdictions and other things and how they're all connected. Our speaker is Andy Lanier, and you're going to hear from Andy a lot today. In the hot seat. Thanks, Andy.
Do you all have coffee? Because you might need it. This is some dense material, and I wouldn't do this to you if I didn't have to. And I'm really glad that I printed this out and handed it to you, because there's a lot of words on some of these slides, and it will be hard to read them from this distance. So I think there are some extra copies Lorinda's handing out in the back. So my task for you this morning is to give you a primer on the Territorial Sea Plan. I'm going to start with part 1, and we're going to go through that, and then I'm going to continue with part 2. And then thankfully after that you get to listen to somebody else. My colleagues will talk about enforceable policies, and then Charlie will talk about part 3. So this morning's period is when we have some of the, probably the densest and some of the most, I guess, foundational aspects of the Territorial Sea Plan to provide. So, without further ado, part 1 of the Territorial Sea Plan provides the overall ocean management framework. Steve, you're looking at me like you can't hear me, maybe, or no?
I'm being attentive, Andy.
Okay, great. Thank you for.
I'm here taking notes.
Okay, so what I'm going to cover in part 1 is I'm going to give you a brief history lesson, which is the first section of part 1. It's kind of the history of ocean planning in Oregon. And then I'm going to talk very briefly about the section that covers the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, and I'll highlight some of the pieces in there that are most relevant for our discussions as we are ongoing. The section C defines the territorial sea, talks about the boundaries, both the eastern and western boundaries. Section D talks about the laws and legal authorities affecting ocean management, and it's a broad characterization of the things that we are all, I guess, subject to for actions in the territorial sea. Section E provides a summary of the relevant ocean management agencies. Section F covers the plan implementation, so how we would amend, change, adopt chapters of the plan. And Section G, which is actually the newest part of this part of the ocean management framework, because it was adopted in 2000, provides broad ocean management goals and policies. So that's what I'm going to cover now in part 1. But I should say that we're not doing this in a vacuum as the state. We often go into policy development procedures and processes because of external forcing events. In the case of Oregon's ocean management, that means that the state started to do this effort in response to oil and gas leasing proposals in 1978. It was a long time ago. Followed then by some interest in mineral leasing proposals on the Gorda Ridge. So a lot of what was driving policy in Oregon was a response to proposals for development or extractive activities in our territorial sea or outside of the territorial sea. It continues then with an understanding about rocky shore disturbance. Cable crossings are another issue that was brought to this group because of the interest worldwide in landing submarine cables on the west coast of this continent. And then there are other kind of newer kind of actions or activities, including marine reserves policy and recommendations and marine renewable energy. And those last two bullets were not actually in part one, but I've added them here to show that we continue to respond to kind of the broad drivers, social context that is brought to us as a community. So there are kind of some general periods of history and time in the development of our ocean policy, the first of which kind of can be encapsulated in the before 1973 period of time. So that's really when the beach bill had been around for a while, and there was a concern about public access to beaches, coastal protection in general, and coastal conservation. And that led to the first Oregon, or the Coastal Conservation and Development Commission task force. So that task force came forward with a set of recommendations. And in some ways, the recommendations of that task force were eclipsed by the fact that the land use planning program in Oregon was put into place shortly thereafter. So you have the development at that in the next period of time of our the land use planning program, which includes the coastal goals, and then the state agency programs that were kind of tailored to meet those coastal goals. Following that period of time, from 1987 to 91, there was another need for a task force, again, to respond to proposals for oil and gas leasing off of our shores. And in that period of time, our task force created the ocean plan, so the Oregon Ocean Resources Management Plan, which is shortened to the ocean plan in many of our reference documents, which included developments such as an ocean stewardship area, habitat protection provisions, the resources policies, and a recommendation that they create an Ocean Policy Advisory Council, and a recommendation that the state then develop a territorial sea plan to follow up on the ocean plan. So the period of 1991 through 1994 is a period of time in which there was that the first OPAC, which put together the territorial sea plan, which was adopted in 1994, and that codified the Ocean Policy Advisory Council in its, not its current form, but its, I guess, the first real implementation of the Ocean Policy Advisory Council happened at that period of time. And that includes the initial preparation of the territorial sea plan. So that's what's covered in Section A of Part 1 of the territorial sea plan. Section B of Part 1 details the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, at least in its first implementation. It provides guidance on membership, so who sits on the council, where they're from, what seats they represent. And those things have changed over time, and they are currently described in statute. So ORS 196.438 describes the current membership structure of the Ocean Policy Advisory Council. Part B, or Section B, then also describes the planning process, which includes guidance on planning considerations, how the council is tasked. They had an initial short list of items that they considered and that they heard public comments on as they kind of went around in the first iteration of kind of the territorial sea plan. And this list on the right here is the short list of issues that they considered and that they heard from the public were issues and areas of concern. But the council then selected basically two big focus areas, one of which was a focus on the development of administrative rules for our statewide planning goal related to ocean resources, and also kind of a general catch-all of a number of concerns that focused in and around impacts to rocky shores. So part 3 of the Territorial Sea Plan. There's also a section in the Territorial Sea Plan in section B that describes the limited responsibility of OPAC in relation to the development of, we call them minor fisheries. It's an interesting component of this section, but it does give guidance on new, specifically state-focused fisheries and how the implementation and development of those policies relates to the council. Moving on to section C, this describes Oregon's seaward boundary. So the western boundary, which is 3 nautical miles from the furthest point of land that's held in ownership by the state of Oregon. So that means that in some places where we have offshore rocks and reefs that are still part of the state, that bumps out the territorial sea to distances beyond 3 miles. There's a certain number of instances where that occurs. Most of them are in the south coast. In addition, it defines and provides explanations for jurisdictional boundaries on the shore, which in many ways is more complex. And you can see that jurisdiction of different agencies corresponds to different tidal elevation datums. Right? So when we talk about tidal elevation datum, we're talking about a mean higher high water or mean lower low water or extreme water. And the state's boundaries are correlated with a couple of very specific tidal elevation datums. It was important, and OPAC at the time did recognize that the issues in the territorial sea washed up onto the rocky shores, and therefore they wanted OPAC to consider not only the extent of the true definition of the territorial sea, which is established from mean lower low water, but also going up to the beach vegetation zone line, which is kind of the upper extent of where the Rocky Shores management strategy would end. So the next section of part 1 covers laws and other legal authorities. And it recognizes that there are many state and federal agencies that have a role in ocean management, generally speaking, and that bringing all of the laws and all of the programs together that manage the ocean in a coordinated framework was one of the big goals of the establishment of a territorial sea plan. And I list here general types of laws that are characterized in this section. They include state ocean-related laws. It includes the Oregon Ocean Resources Management Plan, or again, the Ocean Plan, statewide planning goals, and then federal laws related to ocean management. And I did not want to get into the details of each of these, so I've just provided you with the headers that give you a sense of the breadth of what the council and what decision makers in Oregon have to consider when we are considering development proposals. So the state ocean-related laws start with the Oregon Ocean Resources Management Act. They include the land use planning goals, the beach bill, and then we go into more resource-specific laws covering like the Department of State Lands jurisdiction through submerged and submersible lands. It covers fish and wildlife laws, and statutes, commercial fishing, kelp leasing, threatened and endangered species, marine water quality, and oil spill contingency planning. Those were all of the laws, at least that were recognized at that time. Now, we have not done, or I have not done an analysis to see if there are any changes or additions to this list. And I'll let Steve correct me if there are any others that are major gaps or outstanding gaps from the state perspective. The next section of this part of the plan describes the Oregon Ocean Resources Management Plan. So again, this is one of the foundational pieces, and I think of the Oregon Ocean Resources Management Plan as the first Oregon atlas of resources and uses in the territorial sea. And you see a picture here of what was the earliest kind of form of a geographic information system. Right, so you see the continental shelf of Oregon, you see that this is a map of offshore sediment types. You see these tiny little black dots were places where core samples were collected. And this was all laid out on a state-of-the-art plotter in 1990. So this is a long ways from our current GIS capabilities of today, but it was very forward-looking, and it was an excellent characterization of the resources within the territorial sea and on our continental shelf that the state was developing policies around. And the territorial sea plan, as it's been established, is supposed to be consistent with the policies that are present in this Oregon Ocean Resources Management Plan. So in the arc of the development of the management framework, this was one of the early stepping stones that was then used to build on in other planning efforts for the territorial sea. The statewide planning goals that are covered in this section of Part 1 include both Goal 19, which you're all familiar with, but maybe a little bit less expected, as Goal 17, which is our coastal shorelands goal. And this is the goal that really gets to some of our rocky shores. And the coastal shorelands are defined in our state goal as lands within 100 feet of the ocean shore, as well as other lands around estuaries and coastal streams. Right, so this is kind of the ribbon of land immediately adjacent to this intersection with our water bodies in our ocean. And Goal 17 is very kind of similar to the language that you might find in Goal 19, where we have an overall policy goal to conserve, protect, and where appropriate to develop within this area. And it recognizes the contributions that shorelands make to these ecosystems that we depend upon, and that are crucial for kind of life history strategies of organisms that span kind of the intertidal to the subtidal regions. Then we also do have Goal 19, which is our state ocean resources goal. You should all be pretty familiar with Goal 19. And Goal 19 is a goal that was originally adopted in 77, but it was amended for the first time in 2000. And that amendment really went further along in the establishment of specific kind of criteria that Goal 19 was referring to when they talked about important natural resource areas or marine habitats and or important areas to fisheries. And in summary, the goal says that we shall consider the ecological functions and for the purpose of providing long-term ecological, economic, and social values and benefits. And in doing so, we give higher priority to the protection of renewable marine resources, i.e. living organisms in the systems, rather than to the development of non-renewable ocean resources. So Goal 19 is another one of these foundational pieces that the Territorial Sea Plan references back and the Oregon Ocean Plan references. Now we move away from kind of state law to the federal ocean-related laws. And again, there's quite a few of them. You can tell by the size of the text that ended up on the slide as I was trying to fit them all onto a single page. And it gets at really the complexity that we have in our management regimes for specific decision-making processes. There's everything here that covers kind of the establishment of our program with the Coastal Zone Management Act, to clean water, endangered species, fish and wildlife, the Magnuson-Stevens Fisheries Conservation and Management Act, Marine Mammal Protection Act, marine plastics and pollution, migratory bird-related laws, the National Environmental Policy Act, ocean dumping, national wildlife refuges, and there's a characterization within this section of the Territorial Sea Plan about in brief, what the responsibilities of those agencies are related to the laws. The last part of this section states and recognizes that there is also, in addition to state and federal law, international law that governs activities on the high seas, and that it recognizes that OPAC and the states, in carrying out their authorities within their jurisdictions, also have to consider kind of, and to the best of our abilities, comply with that international law, even though we as a country have not yet signed on to that Law of the Sea Convention from 1982. And then finally, there's a recognition within this section that Oregon Coast Indian tribes have a separate legal status, and it recognizes the reconstitution of several of those tribes, but as a part of that reconstitution, there was not a reconstitution of some of the traditional hunting and gathering rights, and so those rights are agreed upon based upon specific consultation with our Department of Fish and Wildlife with specific Indian tribes. So that summarizes section D. Oh, one more slide on that is that there is a section that discusses the hierarchy of laws within the ocean management framework, and it tries to talk about the relationship of those laws to each other. I love this graphic because it's so 1980s. But it does reference the fact that generally there's, as we look upon the laws that govern our territorial sea, state constitution comes first with the establishment of our state boundaries, the statehood in general. Then you go to kind of common law and the public trust, which is still a big part of the guiding practice for us in terms of making sure that our ocean policies are representative of an interest in the public trust. And then we have the state laws that I referenced earlier, the planning goals, the plans that were developed in response to those laws and goals, and then the specific agency rules and programs that carry those out. Right, so the agency rules and programs in many places is where the rubber meets the road, but all of those things cascade and depend upon one another for successful implementation of management for the territorial sea. Section E is just a summary, basically, of the federal agencies and state agencies and local governments that have a role to play in management of the territorial sea. You can see them listed there. The items in blue are those items that I could easily recall that were not actually present on this list but are current in today's world. So I think there might need to be some other additions to federal agencies on this list. Again, keeping in mind that this list was generated in 1984 for the most part. Now we move on to the part of the plan that maybe is of more interest to you as a council, which is kind of how you steward the plan in general, or the implementation of the Territorial Sea Plan. So Section F, the plan implementation, includes kind of three broad areas. One, it includes a section on how the plan works. Two, a section on how the plan is changed. And three, how the plan is to be implemented. So those are the three kind of big sections of this portion of the Territorial Sea Plan. So this plan is designed to be implemented in those three parts. So there's a provision that there's an ocean management framework. There's a recognition that specifically that there are parts of this plan that were quote unquote mandatory for implementation. And you can see the list of those provisions that are that were titled mandatory. So those were prior to what NOAA envisioned was an enforceable policy. Maybe that was like an early version of that. So that it was an attempt by the state to say that there are some things that we are holding people to account for, and other things that are broad policy statements that we would like to have occur, or would be, they are best practices, but they are not mandatory. So the list of those mandatory provisions includes things like all of Part 2, which is what I'll cover next this morning in terms of making resource use decisions. And then we go to parts within the Rocky Shores policy framework, which includes the goal, objectives, policies, and then the site management policies and amendment policies for amending Part 3 of the Territorial Sea Plan. So within the plan, you will see sprinkled in that language of mandatory, and those are the places where I think we need to take specific note, because there were policies that have language like that shall follow through on an action. Section D, which is the next section, covers the process for approval and or adoption of the Territorial Sea Plan. And it describes kind of the dual nature and the responsibility of this council and my agency's commission in adopting and amending the plan. So the order of operations that's described is that the council must recommend a plan to the commission for adoption. LCDC, upon receipt of that recommendation, must make findings that the Territorial Sea Plan or the recommendations that are provided to the commission carries out the policies of the Ocean Management Act, is consistent with statewide planning goals. Oh, thanks, sorry. And is compatible with adjacent county comprehensive plans. So there's a